You cannot watch it, okay? Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Thompson, along with my co-host, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, I felt like we've done this before.
It's deja vu, man. Everything, this whole, I've been telling people not to complain, but as a creature of habit, this has just cocked me all up for the last week. I don't even know what the day is. Then throw the holiday in the mix. It's just, everything's weird. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way, to Canada.
Yeah, we have a lot of Canadian listeners and followers online, and I hope everyone enjoyed their Canadian Thanksgiving, and for all the rest in the U.S. listening, yes, it's just like our Thanksgiving. It's the exact same, family and friends and food and good times. We'll go through this. If you're listening now, amazingly, the Tennessee Titans have now gone several days in a row, three days in a row with no positive tests, and 5 days in a row with no player positive tests. They did have a coach who tested positive. However, he had proper contact tracing, had not been within their facility for 12 days, and did not expose anyone else. So that did not endanger the safety of the game being played. As long as that continues through tomorrow, we do have one more hurdle to clear. As long as tomorrow we don't see any further player positive tests, this game is going to be played in Tuesday Night Football, only the second Tuesday night game in NFL history.
Yeah, it's I do have to say, with all the, obviously Twitter's not the place to get a good pulse or sense of what's really going on in the world at times. And I'm really happy, as bad as it got at points this week and how frustrated people were that, hey, we're demanding answers now. We want punishment now, and we want to know when this game is going to be right now. And you kept seeing that over and over again. And I understand that frustration from fans. We have shows to do. Like, I want to know too. Like, this messed up our whole week. And now we have more shows to do this week, right after it. And I understand that frustration, but I'm really glad that there wasn't knee-jerk reaction from the people that make decisions at the NFL, and that they took the full investigation in. There's going to be a punishment coming down. It doesn't have to be before the Bills game. I don't care about that. But level heads won. And it appears, at least knock on wood, it appears that because of that level-headed approach and being able to adapt and kind of being able to take the information and still be adaptable, it looks like we're still going to have a game, and we don't have to make this week 18, at least yet. And we don't have to do anything crazy. We can just play football, play a week 5, and we still get the right amount of days rest to go play Kansas City. Like, everything really, at the end of the day, as well, it's a little bit of an inconvenience. All of COVID has been an inconvenience for everybody. So a little inconvenience, and we still get week 5 I think it's a really big win for the NFL. I don't suspect we're going to see many more total outbreaks like we saw in Tennessee. So this is a great indicator for the season that they were able to get over a hump like this, because this is a phenomenal test of what to expect if it does happen, that we'll be able to keep the schedule on pace and get a real NFL game in.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of different things that came up here in being able to, one, I think the isolated incident, you make a great point. Baseball had their moment with the Marlins and the St. Louis Cardinals. It ended up being kind of a rallying point for each of those organizations to really tighten up and get their stuff together. I think that's very likely what's going to happen here. And honestly, if you step back for a minute, besides the fact of how it looks like there was not the appropriate protocols and compliance from Tennessee, all the other pieces pretty much came together well. The Vikings had no positive tests after playing the Titans.
That was huge.
The Falcons had a player that didn't spread anything. The Patriots have had a couple positive tests that does not seem to have been.
Kansas City played this weekend after playing them, right?
Kansas City had 2 players that did not seem to spread further. All those different pieces, I think that those are, in the grand scheme of things, a win. And I want to be careful with that term. I mean, it's still a scary thing, and there's still a lot of not great things going on. But I think that is the lesser of evils. It shows that the teams that are following the protocols, it is functional to complete this season. I do think that, maybe it's going to get a little ham-handed at sometimes. There's a chance that the NFL will continue to not handle things properly. I do think it's very easy in hindsight to look back now and say, man, why didn't they do 4 weeks on and then a bye week and build in 4 bye weeks during the year? Why didn't they do a double bye? Why didn't they build in week 18 or 19? Everything's easy in hindsight, but an awful lot of smart people were saying that in the beginning, that maybe they should have not been as arrogant with the schedule to be absolutely as planned. I mean, heck, without COVID, they were talking about doing 2 buys. Like that was a genuinely, the negotiations that they do, a collectively bargained item that was there between the NFLPA. That was a regular thing being discussed. Like that was on the table in a regular year. This would have been a really easy season to do a test run of, hey, what does 2 buys look like? They did it back in 93. It could easily do that again. So some of those things, I think it's okay to push at the NFL, but in the grand scheme of things, I think that their protocols have shown to be successful if they're followed.
Yeah, and I don't think this is going to be the last Tuesday night football game. I think we're going to see more funky scheduling. You're just
Monday night double headers are fun.
Yeah, we're going to have the 5 o'clock Monday. That's going to be a little weird, but it'll be fun. So I think as long as fans can adapt to that and being able to deal with that frustration in the week and get over, the NFL is not out to screw any particular team. I don't believe that. Like, I don't think they were trying to screw over the Bills, and
they weren't helping the Patriots. I saw a bunch of that.
No, there's a lot going on, and the league is we talk about it here a lot. They're just trying to make money. Like they're trying to get all the revenue they can in, and there's a lot of moving parts. And what's his name there from ESPN, Dan Grzowski or whatever, talked about all the ripple effects. It's not just like a simple, easy decision that you say, play this game here. There's a lot of ripple effects that come into play. So these are smart people. They're trying their hardest. So I just think we don't have to spend too much time talking about it. I think it is when you add up all these data points that you reference. And again, I agree with you. Big picture, there's not a lot of wins to be had during a global pandemic, but as far as the big picture of this NFL season, I think you add up all those data points, and the NFL's got to feel pretty good that they can get 16 games in without totally adding on all these extra weeks. Like this was a really probably worst case scenario to have a team have an outbreak and all this stuff to go around. If they can get past this, I think that they feel pretty confident to get the whole 16 in.
Yeah, well, and the way you said that is exactly how I've approached it. I think that it's funny how people's expectations ebb and flow as events are happening, and how quickly people, I think, almost got to a point where a forfeit or a cancellation was now the expectation. So people set it in their minds, oh, we're going to have extra rest going into the Chiefs game. And now anything that's not extra rest, we're getting screwed. And I kept telling people, I'm like, hey, the schedule was for us to have 4 days rest going into the Chiefs. Now we have 5 when it was supposed to be Sunday, and now it's 6. Like we get this is better than what it was before.
The Bills were never getting screwed.
Really. And I kept flipping it back and forth. I said, hey, there's a 50-50 proposition that somebody's going to make out really well here. You're right. If the Chiefs last played on Sunday and the Bills play on Tuesday and they play next Monday, the Chiefs have 8 days and the Bills have 6 days. Well, guess what? If the Titans had another positive test on Saturday or Sunday, they would have canceled that Titans game. The Bills would have played the Chiefs on 11 days rest, and the Chiefs would have had 4 days rest plus traveling. Like that would have been incredibly unfair. And then everybody would have been totally fine with that. And the Chiefs didn't do anything wrong to earn that. So no matter what, somebody was going to get the short end of the stick here. The more fair, balanced approach is what ended up coming. But I get it that while those things are going up and down, it's easy to be able to see that, okay, my team got screwed. They're out to get us. They gave a quick answer on the Patriots, and they're dragging their feet on the Bills because they're out to screw the Bills. And I get it. Like it's easy to tell yourself that story.
To get there, sure.
It's just not the case.
No, I don't think it was ever the case. And that's just this season we're having. I'm just looking at it as, dude, we have football. I didn't think it was 6 months ago. Seriously. I didn't think we would. And at points in this week, I really thought in my mind, like this just could go sideways really fast. Well,
and real quick, I don't want to interrupt you. Matthew Berry said something really similar to what you just said and said, hey, if 4 months ago, I told you guys that we were going to have football, sometimes we might have to scramble around the date of it real quick. Sometimes we're going to have a game get bumped here or there, but we're going to have games every week, and you guys are going to get to watch 16, 17, 20 weeks of football. Everyone would have signed up for that and said, yes, absolutely. Yes. And those 3 first weeks that went really flawlessly got everybody's hoped up so that it was just going to, this is the way it's going to work now. So it's really funny. He made a very similar point to you.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at, man. I can't believe we have football. It's the only little bit of normalcy that has made all the difference in my life of getting ready, doing the show with you, watching the Bills play. They're good. That's an extra bonus. Like, so I get it. And I get, because the Bills are good, that I think emotions and frustration is at an even higher level with the fans that felt like we were being screwed, because I think every Bills fan after 20 years of being beat down automatically goes to, I know I've thought it a number of times when I didn't think a season would be happening, that of course we have a good team and now the season's going to totally get, and the NFL is going to screw us over and we're not going to get to the Super Bowl because of this or that. Or there's going to be asterisks in the wins and things like that. I get it. My mind goes there too, but then I'm just happy we have football, and that's really all that matters.
All my friends, a lot of my adult friends are from Cleveland. I live in Cleveland again. I went to college here. So many of them have written to me saying that you realize the Bills and the Browns are a combined 9-1. This season's for sure not going to end. Like, there's no chance
the world's going to come to an end.
Yeah, the world is for sure going to end. The Bills and the Browns are 9-1. This is not going to go well.
Yeah, they'll be in the AFC Championship, and then we'll get hit by an asteroid.
Yeah, that is the event. That would be the tipping point that the universe just couldn't take it. The Bills and the Browns will meet in the AFC Championship game, and that's just that's it. Too far.
Yeah, too much.
So let's look at this game a little bit now. I know we had Christian on initially, and nobody was really sure what was going on. We've had a little bit more chance to let things sink in. A couple updates for people. It looks like the majority of players that were on the COVID list for Tennessee are going to remain there. They had their long snapper was able to be activated. They had a couple players that were back at like September 23rd, and a couple people from preseason. I think Isaiah Wilson, their offensive lineman, was from preseason, got activated. There's a chance one or two other guys that we can watch for tomorrow may get activated, but for the most part, it looks like 8 or 9 of their players are going to remain on the COVID test. It may not be all 12 that initially were, but it does look like a couple will be. Their long snapper, there was another cornerback who got activated. The one that does matter for Bills fans to watch for tomorrow, or if you're listening to this on Tuesday morning, Jeffrey Simmons. He's the one player who's the borderline player. He technically will be eligible tomorrow. He will be the one that is probably the only impactful player on their list, that if they got him back, he is a starting defensive tackle. He's a very good player. He's a disruptive player. I think he would be a positive for them if they got him back. Along with that, I never saw that list as some presumptive penalty list that, like, hey, anyone who was ever positive, should be penalized or suspended for the game. Again, we don't know which of those players were the ones not following protocol. All it could have taken was a couple players not following protocol, and the other guys just happened to be around them and catch it. We don't know or can't go out on a limb to say, oh, any of those guys deserved to get it. It's a disease during a pandemic and they happen to get it. I'm upset with the team. I want the team to be penalized. I don't know the individual circumstances to point blame at those things. So I never was on that boat of, oh, those guys should be suspended or not allowed to play.
The only place where I felt individual players should be suspended or fined, it doesn't have to be a suspension, is the ones that had seen the memo and then continued to practice.
I support that.
Those would have been all the ones that didn't test positive, though, right? Like a lot of those positive tests came after, or a lot of those positive tests were before they went off and practiced at another site. But now we're hearing, obviously, there's mixed stories that they didn't get that memo read to them. It was almost like a game of telephone, that the organization was at fault, that they said, oh no, you can do it, but you can't be on site. You have to go outside somewhere else. So the players were told something supposedly. So at the end of the day, man, I don't care. That's way above my pay grade, the suspensions and stuff. I don't even at this point care about the penalties. I think the Tennessee Titans organization knows they made a huge mistake at this point. And I think that the NFL is dealing with that. I just want a Bills-Titans game to get played and get over this Week 5 hump and continue on with the season. So I do think Simmons is, like you said, the one to really watch out for. And I'll be interested to see how they handle that too. Obviously, if he's available, they're going to use him. But because he's been on that list, he hasn't been able, even in these soft practices that they have had here this week, which have been not very much like a normal practice, or they've all had masks and things like that. He hasn't been a part of that. So that there's something there too. They had a whole week off. He hasn't practiced or played in over a week now. So even if they get him back, I don't know if it'll be at a full rotation like it normally would, or they're going to do something to kind of ease him back in, or any of those COVID players.
Yeah, good question from our guy Joe Miller here. With Corey Davis. So Corey Davis is one of the players on the COVID list who is not eligible to return. AJ Brown does look like he's going to play. He had not played all season. He was practicing last week, but in ready before this came up. So it does look like he's back. And it's interesting. There's still some of the top line weapons for the Titans out there. Their depth is really going to get tested with this list. So receivers is a good example. There's not a lot outside of AJ Brown, but AJ Brown's a heck of a player. Same idea. Jonnu Smith is a talent. Derrick Henry we'll get to in a minute. But for Joe's question, I'm going to answer it two ways. One, obviously, I am going to assume Trey White does play. There's been a ton of speculation on why he might not play. I'm not one who believes that the Bills falsified an injury report and made up a back injury because he was hesitant about COVID. I get the dot connecting. He did come out very aggressively about why he was hesitant to play and considered sitting out the season. So I get it. It's not crazy. I think it's a little reckless to assume that just because he got listed on the injury report that he's doing it falsely and is actually holding out. But let's assume he doesn't. For Joe's question, let's assume he doesn't play. I think it would be a lot of bracket coverage. I think that because of how thin their secondary is, they will trust the scheme. They will be careful with it. They also know they can't put Josh Norman or Cam Lewis singled in one-on-one coverage with AJ Brown. You would see a lot of extra attention from Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer would be my assumption.
Yeah, and I mean, that's really going to be the Bills' model most of the time. Even the days Trey White's out there, they're not really locking down in man coverage. But to simplify my answer, I don't think Josh Norman locks down anybody anymore.
That's just not his game.
I don't think he's a lockdown corner. I think he's going to be a good zone corner, and he'll make some nice plays in zone, and I think he'll be fine. But yeah, I can't see him really at this point in his career being any type of lockdown that follows a guy and does what Trey White does against top receivers like Odell Beckham, like he did a couple years ago or last year against Odell. That's just not Josh Norman's game anymore.
Yeah. So for Izu asking any updates on Trey, really, unfortunately, they had a closed media practice on Sunday, so no one knows who practiced or didn't practice. He was a non-participant in the two that got reported. So technically right now he's listed as questionable with two did not participate. The answer is Sunday, which we don't know. That would have been like our Friday practice. Any player that is a DNP on Wednesday or Thursday but practices on Friday usually plays. So if Trey White practiced on Sunday, I assume he's going to play. If he didn't, and we didn't get that report that he was a DNP, then he's much more in question. Unfortunately, anybody outside of there, it just doesn't it's all speculation.
And to this point here, Elliot talks about Bills got accused of falsifying. There was an accusation that was looked into at the end of the year. Nothing came of it. The league looked into it, that, and there was no penalty. That one was a little bit different because it was a player that was actually hurt, and it was a matter of how they handled his actual injury and reporting it or not. But he practiced. Yeah. He continued to practice, and he had veteran days rest. So it was more because he had that surgery in the offseason right when the season
Jerry Hughes, I think it was
Jerry Hughes and his wrist. Sort of a different scenario. I agree here with Greg that I don't even know in this scenario if Trey White went to Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane and said, "Hey guys, I'm not feeling comfortable about playing Tennessee." They wouldn't need to hide that. That wouldn't be a thing that, okay, well, we need to put you on injury. Like, he could just sit out, and we're seeing Jake Fromm be listed for COVID reasons. Mm-hmm. Like, he could just do that. I don't know that they would need to falsify. And I think that Brandon Beane would see the risk of falsifying and having been investigated this past offseason as too much to deal with, because the team could be fined and potentially lose picks. I don't know what the type of fine for falsifying injury reports is at the end of the year when they do investigations, but I wouldn't think Brandon Beane really wants to tread in that water when they could just come out and say, "Hey, this guy doesn't feel comfortable and he's going to sit this one out."
Yeah. And it's a whole, that opens a can of worms as far as, game checks and, some incentives and contracts and different pieces of it. But if the team was behind it and supportive and saying that we understand in today's situation, I have a feeling other owners might give them a hard time in the NFL. Like, it would have opened up a whole negotiating can of worms of, because players have brought that up and others have reported on it, that if you reopened the window that they gave players to opt out beforehand and they saw what was going on now, I have a feeling there's a fair amont more players who might have opted out.
Sure.
So I think there's a slippery slope there that some NFL teams are nervous about.
Maybe.
And it'd be interesting. But yes, I agree. I still believe in the integrity of the team. I think that it's a fine line. I think they will take advantage, just like McDermott sees it as a competitive advantage not to disclose anything and gives empty, hollow coach speak. He still doesn't lie. He doesn't falsify information. He will take any competitive advantage he can find. If they can tell themselves that, hey, we're not planning to play there's no chance Jerry Hughes is not going to play this final game. So we didn't list him on the injury report because the injury report means there's a chance he may not play. We didn't feel it was necessary to disclose that because there was no chance he wasn't going to play. I can see that train of thought. Now they kind of got slapped on the wrist and said, hey, that's not your decision to make, whatever it goes. They did get rid of the probable designation. Now it has to be 50% or lower. So I think that was why the Bills didn't get penalized, because they said there was not a 50% chance of him not playing. So we didn't list him. So I have to assume and take their word for it that they listed Trey White. That means there's a 50% chance that he doesn't play.
Yeah, he could not play for sure. And he could have a back injury, or it could be the speculation. But I don't love getting in the business of speculating, especially with people's health and injuries. It's just a slippery slope in general. But
so another solid question from Mizu here. Is the Titans secondary any good? Because if not, Allen's going to eat. So one, I kind of think Allen's going to eat anyways. But I will say that the secondary is one of the spots that is one of the strengths of the Titans. They are also impacted here. They have two different, maybe three secondary players that are impacted by the COVID reserve list, but the other players are still really good. So you're looking at Jonathan Joseph, Kenny Vaccaro, Kenny Byard, and Malcolm Butler, four really good pieces. They did lose their nickel corner and their backup corner. So just like receiver, just like tight end, just like offensive line, they have several spots where if they see any injuries during the game tomorrow, you could see some below par players playing. There's a chance that if they have an in-game injury, there could be some even like less than replacement level street free agent guys who should not be in a game been forced to play because they're so short-handed. But the frontline starters for the Titans are going to be pretty whole tomorrow. So if they go into the game and play healthy, we're going to be playing the Tennessee Titans caliber team. They're not shorthanded beyond that. So the rest of their secondary is pretty good, but they're thin tomorrow.
Yeah, I think they're pretty good. I do think so far from watching them this year, they're not playing at the level at which they went on their run last year. They're not quite back to that level on defense. And there's the whole time I was watching them, I thought, dude, Josh Allen's going to have another 300-yard game and Bills are going to score 30. I think that this is going to be a good game and the Titans can win this game, but they're going to have to score more than 30 points to do it, because I do think the Bills offense is going to be able to move the ball through the air, even with the good players on that side of the field. Obviously, that depends on some of the health in question of the Bills wide receivers, and we're not sure what that's going to look like here tomorrow. But I do think there's some good talent on that side of the ball. They communicate well. They're pretty sound defensively, but they've given up a lot of big plays this year. They have given up a lot of points this year, and a lot of that has come through the air. So there's definitely some vulnerabilities. I mean, they're not playing one of the best defensive back units in the league.
Another good comment from Joe here. I am concerned about Jonnu Smith tomorrow night. He's probably one of the matchups I'm most concerned with, especially with Matt Milano being out. I'm really hoping that they've come up with a good game plan, specifically maybe with a little more attention from Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer than traditionally used. We normally lean into the linebackers being more associated with the tight ends, and just because of the versatility and how valuable Hyde and Poyer are, I do hope that we give some extra attention there, because we have a nasty run of tight ends coming up here, and I'm hopeful that they have a plan for Jonnu Smith tomorrow.
I do. A lot of the times I see the opposite in film, that they use the safeties quite a bit historically here with the Bills with tight ends, and obviously they got killed by Gesicki. There's nothing that we could talk about that's going to make that go away. They did a pretty good job with Waller.
I agree. Waller was a great pivot.
Yeah, and if that's the type of day Jonnu Smith has, fantastic.
Same with Higbee. Tyler Higbee was under control.
They did a nice job there too. I think the safeties are going to play a big role in that. I think that with some of the other wide receivers being out, And if you're only really focusing on Brown and Smith, I think that you can kind of control that. I don't know that you can take either one of them away, but I think you can keep a lot of that stuff in front of you. The play action that they run is dangerous, though, man. And Smith is a freak athlete, and he comes across the middle. They could get into some trouble, but I don't think we're going to see A.J. Klein out there in coverage on Jonnu Smith. I don't think we have to have those types of worries. I think we're going to have a lot of safety help. He's going to get some catches, but I think that they can contain him for the day. I'm not super worried. I am worried about him, but I don't think that he's going to just break them out like Gesicki did. I think they learned from that game.
Good question here from John Markey. We appreciate your support. It's something that I was cautiously optimistic. I know Eric certainly was questioning when we saw the announcement that Quentin Spain was sitting and they're moving Cody Ford to left guard. I actually think he's looked pretty good. It's been a pleasant surprise with him sliding over there. He's talked about he's a little bit more comfortable. I'm really curious where that comes into play with Feliciano coming back. Obviously, they've been playing with that. We've seen some flashes from winners, but nothing consistent. Spain played right guard for the first time since joining the Bills. This is the first time he had taken any snaps there. I'm really curious. I think that they've shown the propensity to rotate enough that I don't anticipate they're just handing Feliciano 100% of snaps anytime soon. I think he might get into that as the season goes, but I think early on they rotate him. But I think Dawson, I think that we've had with Deion Dawkins, he's been really solid. Darrell Williams has been a revelation at right tackle, especially compared to what he's being paid. And Eric just did an awesome thread on how good Mitch Morris has been and that he's even stepped up a significant level from last year. So I'd say 3 really strong positives, and then we're still figuring it out at guard.
Yeah, I have not gotten a chance. I've been busy all day today doing family stuff, but Eric did a video on Mitch Morris, and I can't wait to watch that. So right after we get done with this, I'm going to tune that up because I did take a look at the thread he did, and for me, man, it's really hard. Even when I do all 22 breakdowns and look at the game afterwards, offensive line is a really difficult thing to understand. And I see a lot of people making
communication, the handoffs,
takes, technique. If you don't know the technique being taught, then it's really hard to understand what it is that they're doing in the handoffs and what a guy's supposed to be doing. And then you have to understand what the defense is bringing, right? Like, and what their role is against them. So offensive line is one that I really struggle with, and I haven't quite learned in the scouting process. So I do lean heavily on guys like Eric. Brandon Thorne is another guy on Twitter that I lean heavily on to kind of, hey, what is going on here? Because it looks good. It looks like Josh has a lot of time. I think the offensive line's done a pretty good job. The run game, I think, also is one of these things that we're not talking about enough. Limited volume, but the production's there. And I like what I've seen out of the production of the run game, and that has to do with the offensive line. So I think overall, layman, without being a scout of offensive lineman, layman, it looks pretty good to me right now. And interesting enough, we talk about continuity all the time. They're shifting all that continuity up, and they're still playing pretty well. So that's a really good sign for Bills fans because I think there's depth there. I think that that's going to continue to be a thing throughout the year. Guys are going to get hurt. Guys are going to have to shift around. And the more experience guys have kind of in these different spots, the better I feel if somebody goes out, say Feliciano comes back in, goes back out. I feel okay that we have guys that have some game reps experience there. So I'm liking what I'm seeing so far.
Yeah, and Ron was asking about that with Feliciano playing. He is eligible. I don't know
He's not off the IR yet, though, right?
Well, but they can do that tomorrow with no notice. Yeah.
Yes.
So they did that with Norman on the Saturday night before he played his first game.
He had no red contact. He was a full participant.
So I would say I expect him to play by the Chiefs game. It's possible he plays with the Titans tomorrow, would be my guess.
Yeah, I would think that I've kind of had that Chiefs game in mind for him because it's such a big game and you want all hands on deck for that. So I think they probably feel like they could get through without him this game because they've done so well, and then, bring him in for that big AFC showdown.
Yeah. And the way you were talking about it, I saw a good video breakdown with Joe Thomas, and he was explaining how offensive line play is the exact opposite of highlights. Like, you see the highlights, and he said it's so fun when you see these guys with the pancake blocks and the road grader things falling on guys, and those are fun. Right. He said, but when you really want to know who's good, it's actually the fact that they never have lowlights. It doesn't have to be that because he actually talked about himself. He said that when I played, I wasn't bigger than the rest of the guys. I didn't have a ton of pancake blocks. I didn't have a ton of these dominant, physical displays that would show up in highlight reels. It's just that I never gave up pressure. Nobody ever got by me. And he said that that's what I prided myself on, is that you can never find a low light when I played. You could never find me whiffing. You could never find me putting my quarterback at risk. And he said, that's what I prided myself on. Not that I physically dominated a guy that everybody passed around in a viral tweet. And he said, that's what he watches for. And those are some of the things to watch for here. We don't see a lot of those with Deion Dawkins. We don't see a lot of those with Mitch Morris. We don't see a lot of those with Darrell Williams. We have seen a couple where the guards have gotten blown up. So I use that almost as a barometer, since he said that, to look for, okay, when do I not notice those guys when I go back to watch film? Is that, hey, they did their job each play. It doesn't have to be dominant, but they're checking the box.
Yeah, we don't have any Jordan Mills. That is
the turnstile.
Weekly lowlights video of just getting turnstiled all over the field. So that's good. And I think they've come a long way. But yeah, no, I agree. And it's anyone that just watches the broadcast and then comes out with a take on the offensive line without really breaking it down, I don't want to hear it, man. There's too much that goes in. Like, you really have to. I hate to be that kind of like snob about film or whatever, but you really have to see the all 22 end zone view to see what's going on in the offensive line, because you miss so much during the broadcast. There's no way somebody can watch the line of scrimmage and just say, oh yeah, right guard, a fantastic game. Like, I don't want to hear it. That's not how it works.
Well, and Eric reminds people all the time that Josh Allen is one of the hardest styles of quarterback to block for, because his strengths are keeping plays alive. He wants to hold on to it for an extra second. He wants to wait and see if he can watch the guy coming open, and then he makes those amazing plays off of it. But that's what makes their job way harder. Yeah. If
you don't know where the quarterback spot is going to be, and so he takes off next to you, and then the defender sees where he's going, you get caught holding a guy because he breaks off from you. You guys, you're holding on to his jersey as Josh Allen trying to run. So he's definitely a difficult quarterback to block for. But I do think, again, that's a good, with the continuity. Deion Dawkins has been here the entire time of Allen's career. Like, you sort of start to get used to it. Mitch Morse had Patrick Mahomes before he came over here. So I think you have some guys that are getting used to playing with a guy like Josh Allen, and that's showing up in a big way.
One last question here before we do our preview or our predictions. It's back-to-back questions. So Lone Wolf asks, if Darrell Williams keep playing well, can we afford to re-sign him next season? PJ asks, so do we let Milano walk? Honestly, they're pretty closely tied. It's something that I think Darrell Williams, obviously he needs to play a lot more games like this. But if, in theory, the rest of this season plays out where Milano struggles to stay healthy, plays well when he's on the field, but doesn't quite stick there, and Darrell Williams puts together 16 pretty strong right games at right tackle, it's going to give them a really tough spot. So one, if Darrell Williams plays like this, someone is going to pay him $10 million or more. I don't think he's going to get a huge contract just because he has, some holes in his history and he's getting up there a little bit more. But say Brian Bulaga got 3 years and $27 million from the Chargers. So I think that's right there. So I'm going to guess $9 or $10 million would be in play if he continues at this pace. They can't afford to give Milano and Williams $25 million combined, or $23 million, or whatever that number is. So if it played out that way, we would either need to hope that Milano had a rough enough year that he needed to take maybe a 1 year prove it, or they'd have to choose one or the other. And then you get into, I believe Matt Milano is a better linebacker than Darrell Williams is a right tackle. I also believe that right tackles are more valuable than outside linebackers. And it would be that debate. Do you take the better homegrown player? Do you take the more valuable position? And thank God that's why we have Brandon Beane and Joe Shane and Dan Morgan and guys like that. It's going to be that kind of offseason, and we're going to have a couple of those now.
If it comes down to one or the other, I'm taking Matt Milano 9 times out of 10.
I think most agree with you.
Yeah, I think and I agree with you that right tackle has more value league wide. Matt Milano has more value, I think, to the defense and to this team when healthy.
Totally fair.
And so I'm taking him more times than not. I like what Darrell Williams has done. I don't know if I'm with everyone on Twitter of how good he's been yet. Again, it's hard for me to really. I just can't jump all in on how good he's been because I don't fully I'm not fully able to scout offensive line in the way some other people. And so I'm not confident in my own eyes in what I'm seeing to say, hey, this guy's going to be really good for years, a couple more years in this offense. And I think they'll be able to get another guy. And if we let him walk, that's a comp pick, right? And he plays right into the comp pick formula.
Sure.
So,
and a $10 million plus deal for either of them, you're talking 3rd round pick. You're getting the premium comp pick.
I like that. I like the sound of that a lot. So I do think, unfortunately, the way I see it lining up is they're not going to be able to afford to bring them both back. And that Matt Milano's just means too much to the defense. And being the homegrown player, we've seen them want to kind of set that precedent with Trey White, right? And Deion Dawkins to pay those guys and keep those guys here. And I think that means a lot to them. And so if it comes down to the two of them, I'm going with Milano.
Yeah. For Cole's question here, just a quick clarification. The franchise tag or transition tag would be eligible. Those are more weapons when you have the money in the first year, but you're not sure about giving long-term money. We'd actually be in the opposite. If we could get both of them,
we could backload.
We could backload deals forever when the TV money comes in. It's the fact that next year's compressed cap is in a terrible year for the Bills, where a bunch of our extensions start kicking in. So we actually wouldn't want to do the franchise tag. We would want to agree with extensions where they let us do a big signing bonus and kick the money down the road to get to that point. So
there'll be some ways to renegotiate other deals and free up some money, but I still don't know that you can fit both those guys if you're talking and then Milano's getting similar to what Cunningham got in Houston. I don't think you can match those two up even with slicing fat off of other contracts.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, right now you need to renegotiate some deals to get one of them in. Right now, we actually don't have the straight out cap space to resign either of them. We would need so some of the deals you guys always.
We got Star's deal coming back next year.
Oh God, yes, yeah. Honestly, that doesn't help. So the deals everybody sees, the Rams do, and the Saints, and all these other teams where this player just converted his salary into a option bonus that kicks money down to the future. We're gonna start doing some of those. So Mitch Morris, Stephon Diggs are the two most obvious ones for the Bills. They also have a couple players say they want to keep John Brown, Jerry Hughes, players like that around longer term, that their contracts expire after 2021, but they're probably going to re-sign at a reduced rate. You could now extend some of them and be like, hey, we want to keep you, but we want to keep you at like $4 million. How about we agree to that now? We'll give you a chunk of it up front, guaranteed that you get the money now, but you give us a little bit of that cap space now, and we'll take the $4 million cap hit season this year and the $9 million cap hit season next year. They can do some of those deals. So if they do 3 or 4 of those, all of a sudden they have cap space to have a regular offseason, to do a full draft class, to extend one of their major players and then a couple small pieces. It would take a lot of maneuvering to come up with 2 blue chip contracts.
Yeah, and I do think even in good years, Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott don't seem like the kind of regime that want to get really into franchise tagging. Like that's it's not a nuclear option, but it's the kind of thing you really don't want to set the precedent for. Players don't like to be tagged. Like nobody wants to be tagged.
It means negotiations broke down.
Yeah. And look at what happened with Dak Prescott this weekend. Like that's the last thing a player wants, is to go into a year on a franchise tag. Yes, it's good money for a year, but they want to negotiate a long-term deal. Like that's what they want, or they want to get out of there. Like they don't want to be tagged and held in a purgatory. So I think Brandon Beane knows that. And some of the younger GMs kind of are steering away from that tag in general. That's more of an old school GM thing that, hey, you don't want to agree with us, we're just going to tag you. Like that's not Brandon Beane's model. He's a great negotiator. He's going to get a deal.
There's not a lot of great winning cultures that use the franchise tag often. Mm-mm. If you go back and look at the teams that use the franchise tag, it's either, I'll say Dak is an exception because the Cowboys, for any I hate them as a team, but they cut checks. Like the Cowboys pay players. So that's not their issue. That's a special circumstance of a really exorbitant negotiation. Beyond that, most of the teams who use the franchise tag are because they're either afraid of cutting the check or the players don't want to play for them, and that's their only way to keep value.
Yes.
All right, well, let's wrap things up here. Again, this is a weird Monday night preview for Tuesday night football.
Yeah, this is a school night, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of weird things. A lot of weird things. With that weirdness, what do you predict we're going to see?
So, first of all, we're not doing our tally site stuff because I'm doing terrible at predicting NFL games. I'm horrible at this stuff, man.
And our new compadre over at the Hoof, Anthony's on fire. If
He's a
anybody's looking,
scientist. That doesn't.
if anybody's looking for gambling picks, our man Anthony Romeo is killing it on that
Those damn
tally
science
site.
people, man.
he's
They're
got
too
he's
smart.
got a doctorate and a PhD. Thinks he's smart. I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't get it. All right, so Bills Titans. I watch it. I think that I like the Titans team. I really do.
They're way better than Bills fans are thinking right now.
Sure. I don't think that they're playing up to the level that we saw last year. I think they still haven't gotten quite going yet. I think they will. I think they're going to be a team that we might see them again late in the year in the playoffs. I think they're going to be a good playoff team. I think that they might even win some games there. They just haven't gotten going fully yet. Their offense does scare me a little bit in the play action pass. I think everyone's talking about Derrick Henry. He obviously scares me. I'm not trying to discredit Derrick Henry, but I'm much more concerned with what they're able to do by establishing him and off that play action pass. I think that they can generate some big plays. Like it or not, Ryan Tannehill is one of the better long ball throwers right now in the league. He completes at a high percentage these long ball passes. Bills have been giving him up at a higher clip than we have in the past few years under Sean McDermott. So there's a little bit of concern there. They're going to score some points. I just think right now with the Bills games we've seen, even though it feels like we haven't seen the Bills play in 3 weeks, and it really isn't that long, but it just feels like forever. The way this offense is playing, if this little hiccup in the schedule doesn't slow that down, I don't see this team being able to hold them under 30, and I can't quite see the Titans putting up 30. So 24, the Bills come out of COVID Tennessee with a win and head back to a big Monday evening game. We can't really call it Monday night football, Monday evening game against Kansas City. So 31-24 Bills.
I like it. I like it a lot. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see here. I saw a couple recommendations online that were sharp. I'm posting some of the ones here. I think it's going to be closer than we're comfortable with. I do think that the us against the world stuff matters. Yeah. And that's a really easy rallying cry for Mike Vrabel right now, because literally everyone hates the Titans. Is not even having to make it up. There's a lot of bulletin board material calling them trash. There is going to be 31 other franchise fan bases rooting for the Bills tomorrow night against the Titans. I think they come out hot. I think they come out and scare us a little bit. I think the depth is going to show as the game goes on. I think we see a really tight game, maybe even a Titans lead at halftime. I think the Bills bring it on, continue to move forward. I think they're the better team. I think they're the deeper team. I think they've been able to practice and have a lot less distractions going on. I think that's going to matter eventually. I think we're going to get a big shot of adrenaline from them at the beginning. I think it's going to end up being, I'm going to say 30-21 right there. I think you're right in the right ballpark. I think that we could see, it might be 21-17 Tennessee at one point, and then the Bills score and then score again at the end to kind of salt it away. I don't think they're going to have control of this game the whole time. I don't think they're going to pull away and destroy them. I do think the Bills are going to win. And honestly, that's all I want. That's all I've been saying to everybody this whole time. I want to get a W. I want this game in a rearview mirror, and I want to move on. I just want this over with. It's been so much distraction and movement and change. I just want it done and over with and get it in our rearview mirror and let us all move on and just let it go. So that's all I'm rooting for. I don't care if it's 13-10. I don't care if it's 49-45. I just want to win, and I want the Titans out of my life.
I couldn't agree more at this point. Just again, but I think you're right. I think there's the rallying cry, and people might say that's kind of a dumb thing to rally behind, but that's what these leaders of organizations do. It doesn't matter if it's cool or smart or anything like that. You find these things to rally behind, and this is obviously a super easy one, right? Some of my tweets might be up on their bulletin board of trashing their organization and the players. So I'm sorry about that, Buffalo fans, but yeah, there's plenty there for them to rally behind, and it's a real thing in sports. It's like one of those things like momentum that in culture that the talking heads don't want to really talk about because it doesn't fit on a spreadsheet and they can't quantify it, but it's there and it's true. We've seen teams rally, but we saw the Patriots have rallied behind that probably 3 or 4 years, where the us versus New England versus everybody, and it works, and it gets some of the players that aren't necessarily as talented on board and playing at their hardest. But I do agree with you that that's great. You might come out fast. we've talked about all week. Sal Capaccio has talked about it. A team right now in the NFL, I don't think there's a team better prepared for adversity, better prepared for a situation like this where you just don't know what's going to happen than the Buffalo Bills. They are always prepared, no matter what. Sean McDermott over prepares. People are talking, well, they've had to put in 2 game plans and weren't sure what they're doing. I don't care. I feel like this is a group of professionals. They rally around their coach. They're uber prepared. None of that stuff worries me. So even if they face some adversity within this game, doesn't bother me. I think that there's nothing that can rattle them to the point where they can't come back and be in a game. And all we need is Josh Allen to have a chance in the fourth quarter. And that's it. That's all we need is as long as it's within the striking distance, this offense can score so quickly and put up points at such a pace. That's all that matters. And the defense makes plays at opportune times, even when they're not playing good, which so far this year, they haven't played great. They've made good plays at opportune times. And that's all we need. And everybody stays together. They're not going to get rattled if they come out and get punched in the face by Tennessee. I just can't see it.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game like that, and I think that it's something that we need to watch for. And again, all that matters is getting that W. So, Aaron, tell the people where they can find you.
Right, Aaron Quinn 716, and mostly in Greg's mentions, sometimes in Eric's mentions, but I'm trying to stay out of everybody else's mentions for the most part.
Yeah, and just to let you guys know, it's not that he doesn't get frustrated and talk trash. It's that he just does it to Eric and I in our DMs. So
or text messages. If they're not listening to my DMs, I'll just start texting them.
So you guys can find me at Greg Thompson, GregTompsett. Awesome chat tonight. You guys are fantastic as always. Again, tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell someone on the grocery line, tell somebody dropping your kids off for school, when you're out for a walk, when you're working out. If you think somebody else would enjoy Cover One, let them know about it. We're having a lot of fun. It's all that we ask for. It's all that we want is just to tell people what we're doing and help share the word a little bit. Give us a rating, give us a like, give us a review. Wherever you're listening to us, take a quick second and subscribe, listen, anything that you can do to help us out. We appreciate it. We've had a great time tonight. We'll be back with our normal sponsors for another regular show this week. So you have to hear us tomorrow night after the game with Uncle Jumbo's and West Her. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.